Why does it have nickel with very little iron? I should say that Joe Rogan spoke with Elon Musk on Friday, and they discussed the nickel with little iron. And Elon said, of course, there are many asteroids that have a lot of nickel. And in fact, when they collide with Earth, that's the kind of location that you want to go to get nickel. That's entirely true. But what he's missing is that along with these objects being nickel rich, they're also iron rich. In nature, we find nickel and iron together because they are both produced in the same supernova explosions of stars. And you can't produce nickel without iron or iron without nickel, and they come together. And in fact, in the solar composition, there is more iron than nickel. So you really need to separate the nickel from the iron in order to get it to be in proportions as observed in the plume of gas around the 3A Atlas. And the only other place where we see such an exaggerated proportion of nickel relative to iron is in the industrial production of nickel alloys. And that was the whole point of me mentioning that. It's not the fact that some rocks do not have a lot of nickel. It's the fact that those that have a lot of nickel also have a lot of iron. And the other thing is that this object is not made of nickel. It's not as if it's mostly nickel. It's mostly carbon dioxide on the surface. At least that's what we've seen.
Now, I watched Elon's appearance on Joe Rogan as well, because obviously they brought you up. He did say right away that he thought it was a comet, but he wasn't 100% close-minded on it. He did say it could be alien life. What were your thoughts overall on what he had to say about it? Because I believe they talked for 4 or 5 minutes about 3I Atlas.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right attitude, to be open-minded. You know, it's a sign of humility. We shouldn't assume that we know the answers in advance. And if something looks strange, you know, we should be curious and figure it out based on data. That's all I'm asking. However, there are people who see that as heresy. The fact that, you know, I'm willing to entertain a possibility that they are dismissing up front, even without good data. They don't really explain the anomalies. I want them to explain the anomalies. You know, I wrote 2 papers trying to explain one of the anomalies in recent weeks, the extended glow in front of the object towards the sun. And, you know, we should all assume that there is some reason for these anomalies and try to figure them out. And if, you know, for example, the alignment with the plane of the planets, that is not easy to explain because it's the third object. And, you know, the chance of the third object being in that plane is less than 1%. You can just do the math of the geometry. And why would the third object be in that plane with such a big size? You know, when we haven't seen a lot of small ones, that these are serious issues that they should address. So whenever someone says, I'm confident, you know, it's not a matter of authority. It's not a matter of making a statement. It's a matter of explaining the anomalies. So rather than waste time in making statements and sounding like the adult in the room, these people should actually say what is their response for the anomalies. That's really the question that they should be asked. How do you explain the fact that this massive object, first of all, is so massive relative to the previous one? Second, it comes close to planets, you know, with a very small likelihood. And third, that it comes within the plane of the planets around the sun to within 5 degrees. Why would you have such an alignment? And these are questions that I haven't seen any of these critics or people who decide that it must be natural. The other thing that they are missing is, in difference from situations in science that very often have no impact on society. You know, in those situations, when you observe, for example, an exploding star billions of light years away, has no impact on our life. If we misinterpret it, nothing bad happens. So scientists better stick to the most likely explanation for those events and completely dismiss any alternatives. That's fine. But when you deal with a situation that has impact on humanity, on society, you can't ignore a small probability event or possibility because when you multiply a small probability by a huge impact, you get a significant outcome. And so that's well known within the intelligence agencies, within, you know, when they assess risk. For example, many terrorist attacks are assigned a small probability because most of the time they don't happen. But nevertheless, there is a contingency plan, and the security forces have put a lot of attention to the details. When they see anomalies, they immediately check, does it indicate that there is a risk or not? Why do they take it seriously even though it's unlikely? It's because the impact would be huge, and scientists are not used to that. So when they realize the probability is small, they just dismiss it, ridicule it, don't want to discuss it. But when the implications for society are large, you can't do that. And they should be educated about that, because that's the whole point of intelligence agencies or security forces. They have to take into account low probability events just because of the huge impact that they have. And in a situation where we have a visitor to our backyard from another star, we must monitor those anomalies and take it seriously. It makes no sense to ridicule the discussion on events that people say are low probability, because the implications are huge.
And I notice even some people in the UFO community, like Jeremy Corbell, kind of downplay you
Yes.
because they're, I think, jealous that you're getting all this publicity and have been in the news more than them, even though you're kind of bringing light and credibility to their side of the spectrum. So
Yeah, I really don't understand that.